Welcome to this episode of Unraveling Adoption, an intentional space to delve into adoption's complexities together. I'm Beth Syverson. I'm an adoptive mom of a vibrant and insightful 19-year-old son, Joe, who is struggling to find his path. I'm walking beside him while working on my own personal growth and healing. I'm also a certified coach to help other adoptive parents. We are committed to helping anyone touched by adoption, and we want to help the general public understand adoption's complexities better too. Today's guest is Alicia Murray, a former foster youth who was adopted at age 10 after 7 different foster placements. She has now adopted 2 siblings from foster care who are 3 and 4 years old. After careers in hair and real estate, she went back to school to study psychology. Her internship was with Pat O'Brien from Adoptive Foster Family Coalition of New York, AFFCNY, and she got her first job in her new career there earlier this year as a family support specialist working with Wendy's Wonderful Kids to help find permanency for foster youth. So I'm so glad you're here at Unraveling Adoption, Alicia. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here, Beth.
Well, let's start with just your own adoption story. What was it like growing up in all those foster placements and you finally got adopted? How did that go for you?
I was with my biological mom until the age of 5.
Oh.
And then I was removed from her because she could no longer care for my brother and I. And it just became overwhelming. And then my first placement was not so good for me because knowing that who your biological mom was and then being placed into this unknown world with these people that you don't really feel a part of, it really was kind of jarring to my system.
Sure.
But once I was removed from that home and placed in my second foster home, I kind of began to adapt to that new normal. And it became kind of normal to some degree. And then by the time I was in my third foster home, I don't know, I kind of looked at life as there was not going to be an ending to this because it seemed like every home was going to just be, when do I leave for the next home? I have a lot of thoughts of just when it was time to go to the next placement, packing everything up. And back then, you would put your clothes inside of garbage bags.
I've heard that. Oh,
yeah.
That's so
was
horrible.
My experience.
Are you willing to share why the placements kept changing? Was it something with the foster family or you guys or what?
Well, because the agency's goal was adoption and these were just foster families, so they weren't willing to adopt.
Okay, so they just wanted a short-term placement.
Right.
And so when that ran out, they're like, okay, on to the next one. And none of those foster families were kind of the foster to adopt type people. They just wanted a foster.
Right.
How come they couldn't have fostered you until they found an adoptive family? They just ran out of time?
Well, I do know with one of the homes, my brother and I were together.
Okay.
And they were trying to keep us together. And all of the homes didn't want to.
Okay.
So there was that issue. Plus, he had special needs. And this is way before they would really do the intense training for children with special needs as they do now. So it just became overwhelming. And we were very attached. So there was that.
Okay. Well, I'm glad they didn't try to split you up. I've heard that happening too. So I'm glad they prioritized keeping you two together. And so you were adopted together eventually?
We were not. Believe it or not.
Shoot.
No. But luckily, he was adopted into a great home where they could really manage all his needs.
Okay.
And I was grateful because although my adoptive family pursued adopting him, but they didn't want to break that bond up that he already was starting.
Okay.
Yeah. But they did commit to keeping us connected, which they did.
That's great.
To this day,
nice.
We are connected. And so we're both adoptive parents together and kept us together and it worked out.
So you had meetups and play dates and opportunities to be together.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's great.
He was all the way in Buffalo.
Oh.
But
and you're in New York City?
My family took trips there and
wow.
lots of phone calls. And I mean, it was a lot of work for them. I see how much went into it now, but I'm so grateful that they've committed to that. And they saw the importance of it.
Yeah, good job. Did they do that just sort of naturally? They were kind of empathetic or was someone training them?
No, naturally.
Just naturally. Yeah. Thank goodness. Good job, parents. Yeah. So you went there at 10.
Yeah.
And how did the rest of your youth go from 10 up to adulthood?
It went pretty good because before you are permanently placed in a home, there were visits. So I had the visits And, like you said, with Pat O'Brien, he used to take me for the visits.
Oh, he was your caseworker?
Yeah.
Oh, and now he's your boss. That's so great.
And now he's my boss. Exactly. So he promised, we're definitely going to find this for our home. I think this is the one. I mean, he set everything up. He already had a relationship with them. And from the first visit, I knew, I felt this connection, and I knew that it was just such a, it was a church home. It was a big family, a big home. It was just, yeah. And one of my big things were I wanted to find my biological family.
Okay.
And they were supportive in that, which was kind of one of the things that gave me the stamp of approval to myself, that I knew if they're going to support me in this, I definitely would be willing to be adopted.
So you kind of checked that out before you said, do you have a choice? Can you say no at 10?
You can.
Yeah, you can. Okay. So the judge would say, well, this is not going to work. So, okay. So you checked it out and said, so how would you feel if I went searching for my birth parents? And they were fine? They were supportive?
They were fine.
Yay. A+.
They said, we'll keep asking you every year until you're 13.
Okay.
And if you still want to pursue it at 13, then we'll go along with it. And they did.
They did?
And so at 13. So from, as you said, from 10 to 13, I adapted very quickly to my adopted family. Like I said, because of just everything that they had going on, from the church life to school. And I never felt adopted.
Nice.
Immediately I felt a part of. It was a very organic adaptation.
Are your adopted parents also Black?
They are.
So, okay, good.
Yeah.
So you didn't have like a cultural race mismatch, and that's great. And did they also have other kids, or were you now the only child?
There were 4 children already.
Oh, okay. Biological children or other adopted kids? Or?
2 biological and 2 adopted.
And you were the youngest one coming in, or?
I was.
Oh, yeah, the baby of the family. Oh, I bet they just doted on you.
And I was treated just like a baby.
And so you did a search for your birth mom at 13. And how did that go?
It was pretty simple. My adoptive grandma, we sat down and we looked through Yellow Pages, which is dating myself.
Okay, children, do you know what Yellow Pages are?
Right. It's a big book. I used to have all of your Google searches as far as numbers.
Used it as a doorstop. They were huge. Yeah. Every single person's phone number in there. Okay, so found them in the Yellow Pages. Wow.
Because they knew the previous address prior to being placed. We went from that and my biological mother's name.
Okay.
And with that, we found the address with the phone number, made the phone call, and shockingly, when we called, my biological grandmother answered the phone, my paternal grandmother, and the rest is history. Within a month, we met up. They had a big celebration, and it was really, really nice.
Wow. And how is your mom doing? How did she manage from when you were 5, I think you were taken? So 8 years had gone by. How was she by then?
Right. She was getting treatment, getting help. She was not 100% better, but she was doing as good as she could at the time.
Okay.
What I did love about our reconnection was that I was able to ask all those questions that I had in the back of my mind throughout the years. And she answered them as clear as day. Simply, I couldn't do it anymore. I wanted better for you guys. I think for me, that was the best answer. It wasn't dressed up with any kind of follow the system and no blame or anything like that. It was just simply, I couldn't. And I mean, that's the most honest thing you could say. And I immediately was able to forgive and move forward. And I accepted her in that moment where she was. And we had a great journey from that point forward.
Wow. Well, that's a mature 13-year-old. And it sounds like a really beautiful connection you had, because certainly at 5, you remembered everything.
I did.
You have a lot of memories at 5. So you had a relationship, and had you not seen her at all for those 8 years, or had it been just little?
I did not.
Okay. So for 8 years, you had not seen her, but you reconnected, and she sounds like she was not like groveling at your feet and just saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But she was just saying, I couldn't. I literally couldn't. Yeah. And this is the best thing I could do for you and your brother. And that does make sense. And to a 13-year-old, okay.
Right.
So I'm sure that there's still, I don't know, maybe you tell me, are there still like, feelings that, dang it, why did it have to go like that for me? Or are you totally clear?
I used to feel that even years later in my early 20s. I still always had that feeling about just life in general. But I would say within the last 6 years or so, I've gone down the journey of becoming a foster parent and an adoptive parent. I look at it as it's only allowed me to go into this arena, if you will, with greater appreciation for my role as an adoptive mom and a foster mom, because I can really put myself in the shoes of everybody, from the biological parent losing their child or giving up their child to the foster child, to the adopted child. And I really can empathize with everyone. And recently I have said, I feel like now in my life, I can look at my story as it being a purpose and not just a woe is me kind of thing. Now I realize it really had a purpose. I just didn't know when I would have that feeling in life, if ever, but I do now. So I don't really look at it as such a bad thing.
I'm so glad to hear that. And it sounds like you've done a lot of healing work and a lot of introspection, self-reflection.
Lots of therapy.
Lots of therapy. Yay. Everybody needs therapy. Everybody.
I agree.
I can imagine it would be easier to hold on to all that toxicity and that anger. And you certainly have a right to be angry, obviously, and how the system kind of tossed you around so much. But it doesn't help anything, really. It just makes you feel bad.
Right.
So I'm glad you found some peace in that, and certainly changing your career and finding this new way to help people and fostering and adopting your own children. That puts it all into perspective and makes use of it. Use of all of that life experience. That's amazing. That's really, really great and inspiring for other people, I'm sure, that are hearing this. So what made you want to foster? Did you know you were planning to adopt when you fostered? Did you do it like the foster adopt track, or were you just going to foster?
I always said since I was young that I want to be a foster parent one day.
Okay.
Just to kind of give back.
Okay.
That's how I look at it, because I was fortunate enough to really come into my adoptive parents and family. They have been, I feel like, the best thing that could have happened, given everything that I experienced prior to. So for me, I just wanted to kind of give a little back. One day, I always said one day. And then I got a little older. I said, well, maybe not, but, took the classes, went through everything. And adoption came as an option during my process of foster. Because every time a child was placed with me, they always said, would you be willing to adopt? Would you be, that's how it kind of came about. And then I said, I guess so, And then with my children that I have now, it started with one.
Okay.
And I was totally against another. I only wanted one.
Okay.
But building a rapport with their biological mother and circumstances taking lots of turns, she asked me to take, and I said, okay, it will be temporary, and temporary turned into a few years later.
Oh, wow.
Here we are.
Wow. And it's a girl and a boy, just like you and your brother, right?
That's a girl and a guy.
Oh, wow. So you probably were like really torn, because you were like, we were planning on just one, but I don't want to split up the siblings. And
that was my thing, not splitting up the siblings, because they were so close in age. Yeah. They're not twins, but they are a year apart.
Just a year apart. Whoa.
And having a 1-year-old and a newborn was challenging, to say the least.
I bet. Oh my gosh. I hope you had a lot of help.
Thank God. I have a nice little village, and they were really there for me.
Great.
Lots of sleepless nights, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And, the process is almost complete, and I'm just grateful.
Oh, that's amazing.
Been a lot of ups and downs, but we're here.
Sure, of course. Yeah. And you're still in touch with their birth mom?
Yes.
You considered an open adoption then?
Yeah.
And intentionally, it sounds like that's very important to you.
Yeah. Even before that was put on the table.
Even just as a foster parent. And you have such interesting perspective, as you've been there yourself as a foster child and adoptee, and now you're parenting. What are the benefits for openness in this whole situation? What are the benefits to the children?
For one, allowing them to know their lineage, where they come from, them still having all the pieces, in a sense, because you can give them the best home, all the love in the world, and, culture them, the hope, everything. But if they get to a point where they're adults and they are curious to who they are, things can shift where they can resent you. They can regress, period. So for me, the benefits are definitely having that child feel like a whole human when they're an adult.
Yes, that's great. I see sometimes on some of my parenting groups that I'm in, adoptive parents are so closed off. And then as soon as the kid's an adult, they cut them out. It's like, okay, well, you built that.
Yeah.
You built that into the system. You were so closed and scared of them finding their birth families that now they've dumped you. That was kind of counterproductive, even if you want to do it in a selfish way. If you want to stay in touch with your kids, maybe stay more open.
In my work, I try to let some of the pre-adoptive parents know as far as trying to keep the children connected to it, especially if they already know them and know that they exist. Yes. Because children can look at you as the enemy, because children are very resourceful, and as they go into teen and young adulthood, it's not as simple. It's easy for them to Google people and look them up and find them.
Yeah.
And you could become the enemy.
Absolutely.
And I know it's a lot of fear in that, of losing the child, but we have to remember as adoptive parents, yes, we're their parents, but they also are someone else's child.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth.
And there's enough love and care for everyone. It's not like there's a limited amount of this child that you don't have to chop them into pieces and pull and, tug at their arms. There's enough if we can just keep open. And I have a closed adoption with my sons because it's international and it's easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, you should be open. I haven't had a chance or the opportunity to do that. He's thinking about doing a search at this point, but it hasn't even gotten anywhere yet. But I can't imagine how challenging it is, but I can see from the many adoptees I've talked to how important it is to stay open. What are some of the challenges from your perspective now as a mom? I'm sure it's no fun to share your child and navigate all of this. What are some of the tough parts?
She still has visits. She doesn't take advantage of them as much, but she still has that option. When she does, the most challenging part is just getting ready to do it, just to go, and just the process of doing it. It sounds great, and I'm definitely in support of it. But in the moment, there's a lot of angst. There's a lot that goes around it.
Yeah, I bet. Is there a part of you that's like, what if they like her better than me?
In the beginning, yes. But as we've done enough visits to where I know that the kids do call her mom. I taught them to call her mom from babies, but they still refer to me as mommy. They come to me. And the beautiful part of it, which is rare, she refers to me as their mother in front of, So there's never any kind of go to Miss Murray. She always says, go to your mommy. And, so there's a lot of that that comes from just the relationship that I built with her.
I was going to say, that comes from you communicating with her, yeah? Yeah. Like, what should we call ourselves? Did that kind of conversation literally come up when they were little?
No.
It just happened?
No. It just happened. When her baby, the first one, was placed with me, before she could talk, I would always say mama, like to her and myself. So she was kind of just calling both of us.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. That's so beautiful. And I'm sure your life is busy, but you make time to make sure they have opportunities to see her. Maybe from your own experience or from other parents that you work with. I know that a lot of birth parents sort of balk at meeting up. They're like, they had a plan and then they didn't show up. What is that about? And how do you manage all that?
That happens.
Because I'm sure it's disappointing for everybody involved, right?
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Some years ago when it used to happen, there'll be confirmation. And then as we're like en route or waiting and we get a call, something just came up. And I used to be the one disappointed because the kids didn't really know what was going on.
They didn't even know they were going to see anything.
So, but I felt it because of my own personal.
I bet. Yeah, I bet that was really triggering.
It always went back for me to the last time I saw my biological mom before being in placement was when she told me she was coming back and never did. And I never forgot that. Yeah.
Oh, that gave me chills. Oh, that is so intense for a 5-year-old. Ooh. How did you ever learn to trust anybody after that? That must have been a big hurdle.
It was hard.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't start truly trusting until my forever home.
Yeah. Then it probably even took a while, but you eventually settled in. Mm-hmm. So how do you manage it now if she, and I imagine birth parents, I'm sure it's no fun to go see the person who's raising your children.
She doesn't like going to this. She's very vocal. She doesn't mince words. But I will say she has never, ever disrespected me. She's always made me feel respected.
Okay.
That's why I always say it's a rare relationship because there's not really that much camaraderie with bio and foster and adoptive parents.
Yeah, mostly.
I've learned whenever something goes awry and she cancels, for instance, last week we were supposed to have one. She didn't call. And I kind of chalk it up to this is just the way it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's just the way it's supposed to go.
Do you wait to tell your kids until you're there so they don't get disappointed just in case? Or how do you manage the kids?
I never tell them at all.
Yeah. They're little enough. They just get in the car anyway. They don't know where they're going.
Right.
Okay.
They just go. And when they see her, it's usually for them being around her. It's just playtime.
Okay. So that's fun.
It's just, playing. And if we get there and she's not there, then we just get something to eat and we go home.
We just had a little drive, kids.
Yeah.
Oh, so tell me about what you're doing at AFFCNY and with Wendy's Wonderful Kids. And what is your job? What does it look like? What do you do?
So I am a family support specialist with Wendy's Wonderful Kids, which is an association with AFFCNY. What I do is we provide services for post-adoptive families. A lot of families that have foster children, they receive therapy and they're able to go to groups and all kinds of speech and ABA services. We actually provide those services post-adoption because in a lot of cases when adoptions are finalized, it all gets taken away. And a lot of times adoptive parents don't know where to even begin to search for the services to extend. So my job is to let them know we're here and provide the services post-adoption, or if they have a finalization date, I work with them as well.
Okay. So like you go to court with them and all that?
I can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you just support them in that whole process.
Talking, therapy, providing services, groups. There's an array of things that we have in support of them going forward.
And Wendy's Wonderful Kids is part of the Dave Thomas, that's Wendy's thing.
Correct.
I always thought Wendy was the adopted person, the daughter that he named the restaurant after, but it was Dave Thomas that was adopted, right?
Dave Thomas, yeah.
I had to look it up. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And as you know, well, from my experience of being an older adopted youth, Wendy's Wonderful Kids primarily is older adopted youth.
Yes. So, the ones that are probably harder to place or that have been kind of tossed around. Yeah.
And that's exactly it.
Yeah, that's great. They're not, advertising for new batch of babies here. They're trying to help the ones that are really needing a family. And by the time Wendy's Wonderful Kids gets there, is there no chance for reunion with their birth parents? Reunification, yeah.
Yes. In some cases, there are. In most cases, the children are already freed.
Okay.
So the parents have already lost their rights. And the goal is just to get them permanent placement.
Yeah. Because we don't want our kids, our youth, just
aging out,
yeah, without ever having a family. I can't imagine what that would be like. Like you're 18 and you have never had a family. Like, that's really hard. So what's the oldest kids you deal with?
I have a 19-year-old that is in the process of being adopted.
Oh.
So it happens that they get much older as well. This family, they've had him for about a little over a year. Okay. And he was in residential treatment prior to. So this is just fantastic.
So you got to go to a house instead of an institution. That's amazing. So I would think at 18, everything stops, but it keeps going if you're already in process?
Right. It can go to 21 now.
21. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, great.
And in some cases, a little longer.
Okay.
But normally in New York, they age out at 21.
Okay. And you only deal with New York foster children, right?
Correct.
You actually go visit them and take them places and interact personally, or is it all on Zoom?
Most of it is on Zoom, but that is an option if a family really needs you to come in and really talk with them. The point is to build a relationship with the family. And sometimes there is a need for you to come. Yeah. Some people need human interaction.
Yeah. Do you tell your families that you were fostered and adopted yourself?
I do. And shockingly, which I've discovered on this journey, a lot of the adoptive parents were adopted or in the system themselves.
So they're also...
And it's not something they divulged prior to. And me opening up my story, they kind of like, oh my goodness, me too. So I find that beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Connector.
I bet you have so much empathy. And I also bet it triggers you. Do you sometimes go, like, go find my therapist right now because something just happened?
I do when I hear some families that are frustrated with the children. For instance, if a family says like they want to give the child back, which happens at times, depending on what's happening, because I was not an easy teen. I know that. And the way my adoptive family, my forever family just surrounded me with love and support and just had a no give up mentality. Yeah. That's why for me, going back to with the children, there was no way I could give up a second because of the love and everything that I experienced. I always think about how they fought through everything for me as well. So for me, that does trigger, but I'm able to, in a very gentle way, kind of reel them back around because I know the importance. So for me, although I'm triggered, I kind of go into this thing in my mind.
Dissociate a bit so you can help them.
And letting them know what could happen going forward with that child.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure it's so frustrating, but it's a serious commitment people make. And I'm sure sometimes it gets extremely challenging. There's so much trauma on board. And do they provide, like, I know that you're post-placement, but do you think in the agencies or government that's doing these foster care systems things, are parents getting enough training and resources to deal with trauma?
I feel like they just started implementing more training, training that should have happened a long time ago. Okay. There's a training called TRIP where ACS just implemented it this year.
Okay.
I took the training. It's an 8-week course, training parents how to manage and deal with children that are placed in their homes with all different kinds of traumas, because a lot of times it was kind of like the training was more focused around knowing how to, feed and comfort and love and just hug. And the children that are coming from foster homes, each home has its own traumas and they're kind of compounded on each other. And by the time they get to you, this child is just fully loaded with trauma. So acting out and doing certain things is not necessarily, this is just a bad child. Yeah. I don't even like that terminology as a bad child. It's a child that has experienced some trauma and they're acting out for a various amount of reasons. So the training trip is definitely, I feel, helpful. Yeah. It's new, it's helpful, but it's also needed in the worst way.
Yeah. I hope that it's getting better. But I think in the past, adoptive parents just got kind of the rosy picture. Oh, look, we can fulfill our family desires and we'll be lovely and we're great parents and it'll be just a lovely situation. And then the reality strikes, your kid is sexually acting out or stealing or whatever, running away. Addiction can be, just big stuff that really is hard to deal with. And I don't think anyone told them that, that was a possibility.
Right. And that's what this training does. It kind of like takes off the veil and lets you know, like, this is what you may experience. Yeah. The child may be loving and beautiful and great and all that, but also this.
And it could happen.
Comes along.
Yeah. I think they need to be prepared and then walk into it eyes open, like, okay, this might happen. I mean, it could happen to anyone, a biological child or whatever, but the trauma adds extra layers and stuff's going to happen.
And even sometimes parents think if they adopt or foster a baby, that nothing can go wrong later because I've had this child since the baby.
That's what I thought.
That child still has things that are just genetic to the child.
And then you add in many years of trauma with neglect or abuse or hunger or houselessness or whatever, that adds to all of that. So these kids that are older that you're working with, there's just going to be stuff.
Always.
There's going to be.
Which I try to tell my family, this is to be expected. But I always ask them, do you love this child? Because love is an action. Mm-hmm. And it's not always pink and it's not always red. Yes. Sometimes it gets black, sometimes it gets blue.
Yes.
But love is an action.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like when you adopt, that's it.
Yeah.
You just stick with it with whatever you get.
I always try to tell them it gets better later. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem like it in the moment of everything just being over, but it gets better later because I really became, I would say, a fantastic adult child.
I think you're fantastic.
Thank you.
There were some rocky years, though, in your teens, you said.
Yes, very rocky. Yeah. And so when I was aware of it, I was able to give so much back.
Yeah, I agree. We're not out of the woods at all, but it is so much better. And I've learned so much. My own therapy and coaching. I had a coach, Heather Ross, who I love, that has helped me so much with the addiction piece. And I am in connection with him, even though he's still in active addiction or whatever. By the time you hear this, I don't know what he'll be doing, but we're connected. And that's the most important thing.
Exactly.
More important than him behaving correctly or being sober all the time or whatever. It's the connection is the most important thing.
Most important.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Is there any way we can support your organization or you?
Yeah.
Yeah. What can we do?
I can be emailed at Alicia, Alicia, at AFFCNY.org. Any questions, anything that we're doing, you can also go to AFFCNY.org and just see an array of what we're doing. We have events coming up. We have programs and groups that support families and teens and just everyone as a whole.
Yeah, your organization is amazing. There's so many resources for adoptive parents and foster parents and just for adoptees and for teens. You've kind of hit every demographic there is, I think, with your group. And you have an annual conference. The helpline, we had Chester on a couple of weeks ago running that 24/7 helpline.
I've known Chester since I was 10 as well.
Really? Oh my gosh. I bet that must be funny to run into him in the hallways at your work now.
Yes. Well, even when I was doing my internship, I ran into Chester.
Wow. You guys go way back. That's pretty cool. I bet they're so proud to have you.
And my adopted mom and Pat and Chester all used to work together as social workers. So there's a lot of history there.
Wow. Oh, I love all those guys. That's so great. Well, this has been a wonderful discussion. You've really opened my eyes to the great stuff and the challenging stuff about foster kids and the adopting later in life. And I think that I want to do whatever I can to make sure and include you guys in all of these conversations about adoption.
Right.
Your voice is very important. And I think we need to do whatever we can to help kids that are older that need to have families. I mean, it seems really important. And AFSCNY is a nonprofit, so people could just donate money, right?
Exactly. Right.
And Wendy's Wonderful Kids is also a nonprofit. So you guys just work together. You're collaborating.
Exactly.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate it. And I hope that people really think about how they can help.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for having me, Beth.
Yeah. And listeners, please share this episode so you can spread the word. If you know anyone in New York, particularly for AFFCNY, but people can access the resources throughout the world, right? The online resources.
Correct.
And I understand that you can assist families from different states as long as they've been created through Wendy's Wonderful Kids.
Right.
And if they start in New York and adopt their children through Wendy's Wonderful Kids and later decide to relocate, you can still use your services, right?
Right.
Yeah. So share this episode to people you know in New York or everywhere so we all can understand adoption's complexities. It's very complicated. Mm-hmm. I just admire Alicia's beautiful heart and openness with everyone. So it's amazing. And find Unraveling Adoption at unravelingadoption.com. On our website, you'll find all the old podcast episodes and my coaching page. If you're interested in coaching, I coach adoptive parents and foster parents. And Patreon, if you'd like to be a Patreon supporter and help us out with a couple bucks a month, that helps us keep all of this running so we can keep commercial-free episodes. Well, thanks again, Alicia. Great to have you on.
Thank you.
So everyone, thank you very much for listening. Alicia and I want you all to stay safe.